The prairie was wide and empty, stretching out in golden waves beneath the late summer sun. The wind whispered across the grasses, carrying the scent of wild sage and dust. To most men, it was a lonely place. To Eli Turner, it had been nothing but that for years. He had come west after the war ended, seeking something, maybe peace, maybe work, maybe just distance from the graves he carried in his heart. Instead, he found himself wandering from ranch to ranch, taking odd jobs, keeping mostly to himself. Folks said he was a good hand, quiet but steady, though his eyes always seemed far away. That's when he noticed her. On the far edge of a cottonwood grove, about 2 miles from where he had set up his own camp, a woman was working alone. She was young, perhaps mid-20s, but there was nothing fragile about her. Every day Eli would see her dragging logs, splitting them, setting them into place. She was building something, a cabin, 1 log at a time. Most folks out here didn't last alone. Settlers came in pairs, or families, or not at all. The land had a way of grinding down the solitary. Yet she pressed on, sweat on her brow, dirt on her hands, lips pressed into a line of sheer determination. Eli had no business watching her, but he did. At first from afar, riding by on his horse as though just passing. Later, from the rise above the creek, where he'd sit in the evenings, rolling a cigarette and looking down at her steady labor. She reminded him of something he thought he had lost, the quiet, stubborn courage that made a person carve out a place in the world when everything seemed set against them. The first words. It wasn't until the 3rd week that she noticed him. She had been trying to lift one end of a log onto the foundation stones, and it kept slipping, bruising her arms. Eli had dismounted his horse without thinking, stepped down the slope, and caught the log before it rolled. "Careful," he said softly, setting it down for her. She straightened, glaring at him with sharp blue eyes. "I don't need help." "I reckon you don't," Eli replied, brushing the dust off his gloves. "But you might take it anyhow." There was silence. The cicadas buzzed in the grass. At last, she nodded once. Together, they heaved the log into place. Her name was Clara Whitfield, and she had come west from Missouri after her father died, determined to claim the land he had purchased before passing. She had no brothers, no husband, no one to do the work but herself. Folks in the nearest town said she was crazy. She said she didn't care. Eli helped her set 2 more logs that day. Then he tipped his hat and rode off without asking for thanks. But the next morning, she found him there again, tying his horse to a tree, wordlessly lending his strength. The rhythm of work. Days passed, then weeks. The 2 of them fell into a rhythm. She would be out early, rolling logs or digging a trench for the root cellar. Eli would show up with his quiet presence, saying little, working steady. Sometimes they spoke of small things, the weather, the stubbornness of mules, the best way to notch a corner beam. But more often, they worked in silence, the kind that grows comfortable between 2 people who understand each other without needing words. One evening, as the sun sank low, Clara paused and leaned on her axe. Sweat streaked her face, but her smile was triumphant. "Look at that," she whispered. The cabin walls stood waist-high now, the shape of a home taking form where before there had been only raw earth. Eli looked at it, then at her. "You're doing it," he said. She met his gaze, and for the first time, he saw not just determination in her eyes, but also a flicker of warmth. Shadows of the past. Still, Eli kept his distance. At night, alone by his campfire, he would stare into the flames and remember the faces of those he had lost, the wife he had buried back east before the war, the son who had died too young. He told himself he was only helping Clara because no one should face the wilderness alone. But the truth was harder. She was giving him something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. One night, as they sat on the half-built porch watching the stars rise, Clara asked quietly, "Why do you always look so sad?" Eli stiffened. He wasn't used to folks asking. After a long silence, he answered, "Lost too much along the way." She didn't press, only nodded. After a moment, she said, "So did I. That's why I'm building. Because if I stop, then all I've got is loss." Her words struck him deeper than any bullet ever had. A testifier. The prairie, though, does not allow peace to last long. One dry afternoon, smoke appeared on the horizon. A wildfire, racing across the grasslands, driven by fierce winds. Clara's cabin was directly in its path. They had only hours. Together, Eli and Clara hauled buckets from the creek, soaking the half-finished walls. Eli cut fire breaks with furious strength, carving lines in the soil while Clara dragged brush away from the structure. Their arms ached, lungs burned, but neither stopped. As the fire drew closer, the heat roared like a furnace. Sparks rained down. Clara coughed, staggering, and Eli caught her, shielding her with his coat. "Get to the creek," he shouted, pulling her away as the flames surged. They dove into the shallows just as the firestorm swept past. Smoke blackened the sky, but when at last it cleared, the cabin, charred, battered, still stood. Clara's eyes filled with tears as she leaned against Eli's shoulder. "It's still here," she whispered. "So are we," he said. And for the first time in years, he let himself hold someone close. Building more than a cabin. In the weeks that followed, they repaired what had burned. Stronger walls, a sturdier roof. But something else had been built in the fire's trial, a bond neither could ignore. One evening, as Eli hammered the last shingle into place, Clara came up beside him. "You know," she said, "this place ain't just mine anymore. You've put in as much of yourself as I have." He looked down at her, surprised. "You sayin' I should stay?" "I'm sayin' I wouldn't mind it," she answered, her lips curving into the faintest smile. For a long moment, Eli said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Guess I've been driftin' long enough. Hope one log at a time." By the first frost, the cabin was finished. Smoke rose from its chimney, warm light spilling from its windows into the dark prairie night. Inside, 2 chairs sat by the fire. Not one, but 2. Eli sat there, watching Clara mend a quilt, the soft glow painting her face. His heart, once nothing but scars, stirred with something long forgotten. Hope. He realized then that he hadn't just helped her build a cabin. She had helped him build a reason to live again, one log at a time. And for the first time in years, the lonely cowboy no longer felt alone.